total runs about 15 minutes, so I carved out pieces. And hopefully it still makes sense. This is called Down, Down, Down. Once it was about getting noise complaints from the man upstairs. Hello from heaven, this is God speaking. I know you're all enjoying yourselves down there, and don't get me wrong, that's what I made amplifiers for, but you're making such an awful racket. We can hear you all the way up here, and my cherubs won't stop crying, and none of the seraphim can hear themselves think, and I'm getting the most monstrous headache, so would you please quiet down, down, down. Once or twice, or maybe dozens of times, we shoved the furniture up against the walls. We stowed all the stuff we didn't want broken, lamps, vases, picture frames, deep in our closets. We stocked the kitchen with booze and bags of chips and microwave popcorn, but mostly booze. We gestured to a corner of the living room and said, "This is your stage." And later these nights, when there were so many bodies in the room, we were a fire hazard. When the amps and mics and cords were strewn across the floor, when it got hard to breathe, when the music was going and the singers were singing, when the guitars were so loud they were just noise, and we were all shouting and jumping in every measure. Every count of 4 was like being reborn. We all leapt into the air, and we were weightless, and the laws of gravity no longer applied to us. We were all grinning foolishly as our feet and knees raised up, and we were squatting. But we were squatting in midair, and I gotta believe this. We were flying too. And we were all grinning foolishly, and we knew it. Once I star 16 on him. Didn't know what I was going to ask, but it was dawn, and the morning light had this quality like water. The walls were seriously pounding still. The dishes in the cupboards were rattling still. I had this singing in my ears still, and as I stood there in the middle of our trash living room with the snoring sleepers and the tipped-over beer bottles, I felt like I was going vibrato. And it seemed as good a time as any to hear what he had to say. But when he answered the phone, "Hello, son," I hung up. There was this lingering brightness in the speakers, the preamp outputs. Every so often I go to church. There's this one on 16th and Broad Street that I like, the one with the sky blue front steps. Not to listen to the pastor or even to pray, but to go sit in the pitted wooden pews and stare at the little pencils and the battered hymnals and the old copies of the American Standard Version. And I listen to the organ. I like how when it swells, it lets out this sound like a big wave. And if it gets loud enough, it's like the water rises high over the tallest skyscrapers in the city, over the TV antenna and telephone wires. And for hundreds of miles around, deep into the flat of the desert, you can see the wave rising and rising, ready to crash down and wipe everything clean. Once I came out of work, and the street was the loudest I'd ever heard it. It was past midnight, and no one was around, and the sky beyond the edges of the buildings was black and wet. A block away from the front doors of the club, the bass was overflowing onto the street, washing away parked cars, dead leaves and empty cups, sharp pebbles of glass, grit in the sidewalk. And when the music collided with my body, I was swept down the road, sailing on the roof of a minivan with damp shoes and my arms out. And then, just then, only then and never again, I thought I heard someone say, "Holy, holy, holy." Once I wanted to see the dark and the flat. I wanted to have it all around me, so I drove to the desert and parked my car on the side of the road. I got out, and the sound of the door slamming was a thunderclap. I stood there on the warm asphalt and looked up. Did you know there are more stars than you can count, and each one is a song, and they're all playing up there, so it's never as quiet as you think. Someone is always singing. Once while crowd surfing at one of those venues packed wall to wall with sweaty, singing, jumping people whose bodies are filled up with sound, and you're so close to them that you forget where your body ends and theirs begins. I leapt so high that I came down upstream, and there were all these hands holding me up, sprawling my face, my belly, my chest to the ceiling. No, past the ceiling, straight through the roof to the fucking sky, lifted, taken up by all those human beings, all those voices, all those heartbeats, all that glorious God-given sound. I wanted to be screaming, "Up, up, up!" We were the great wave rising over the city, over the desert, over the whole continent. And I was there at the peak of it, so close to the sky I could hear it inside me. And then I wiped out on the concrete floor. Dropped, just like that. Bruises, boots, and shoe soles. The heavy thud of my body on the ground, everything disordered and dizzying. Someone pulled me out of the pit, but I don't know who. It was so dark and all those lights were so disorienting, and someone said, "Don't crack." You get these cryptic messages sometimes. Once, I didn't make it back. I had a splitting headache when I left the venue. My body was aching, not from the fall, but from missing the hot electric touch of all those hands on me. And I went looking for noise. I looked for it outside of work. I shoved my hands in my pockets and walked over to the club. The low notes were coming through the walls. I paid the cover charge, wandered into a throbbing crowd. It was hot, and the music was loud. I wanted my pulse to change, to jump, but it didn't. I looked for it in my car. I dug through the cassette tapes in the back seat, felt them clatter in my hands, spun the little spools with my fingertips. I plunged one after another into the tape deck, cranked the volume until my speakers rattled and my mirrors blurred from the bass. I looked for it in the desert. I waited for a sound like a thunderclap, but it didn't come. I laid down in the dust, my face, my belly, my chest to the sky, but the earth was cold and hard, and everything was so still. I was so still. It was the stillest I'd ever been. And I saw all these stars, but no one was singing. I curled up into a ball. Once we were all in our little house, and the floor was moving up and down, 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 with so many people launching themselves off it. Blam, right into the air. It was a temple. It was a church. You could feel the music blocks away, see the light radiating into the night. But I was knocking on the back door because someone had locked me out, and they couldn't hear me calling. I looked for it in my kitchen. I took a wooden ladle and banged on all the pots I could find. I took a frying pan to the garage. I hauled our garbage can to the driveway, kicked it onto its side, and pounded at it with the frying pan, with the ladle. I dumped the trash onto the concrete and battered the can with my fists. I was screaming. I was screaming so loud it burned. When I was done, I sat down cross-legged next to the pile of garbage and cupped my hands over my ears. But I didn't hear any waves, didn't hear any great ocean, didn't hear anything at all. Sometimes these days I stand outside looking up, waiting for something to fall down, down, down into my hands.